Alright, so these are some knives that I'm pretty excited to be showing because they're all handmade and I'm the one who made them with these hands. So that's always cool to be able to take something that wasn't anything. I mean, it was just a bar of steel. Hang on. Where's my steel? To be able to take some of this. Okay, this is just steel. O1 tool steel. To be able to go from this to a finished knife is very cool. Very cool stuff. And here I've even got a blade design drawn out on this one. Haven't made one of these yet, but I think that might be a pretty cool, pretty useful design. But this isn't about that. This is about the knives that I have made, not the ones I'm planning on making. So, let's start with some of my first blades, after wood. Since this isn't really a knife, just want to show you this. This is a wood knife made out of poplar and oak and pine. The blade is poplar, the handle scales are pine, and then the bolsters are oak. And of course the pins are something, I don't know, maybe poplar, maybe pine, they're just little dowels. But this was my first attempt at making a knife with bolsters, which is kind of a fun experiment. And yeah, it was my first full wooden knife with a handle and pins, and this is cool to me. And it's based off another design that I'm going to show you in a little bit. So there's that one. Next, got two knives. One is a full-size flex blade with a leather sheath. Now this one I have carried in my recent job working for a friend's family, just like with the companion. I've carried this, and then I continued to carry this when I was working for my friend's family, and then working for a remodeler and contractor. I would also continue carrying this, and as you can see, the tip is snapped off. This is actually the second time the tip was snapped off. Had to reprofile the spine for the first one. But it's flat ground. You can see the heat treat finish on it, that kind of bubbling. But it's polished. It's cool. It's still decently sharp. It's not super sharp, but it is sharp. Oak scales, filework spine, brass pins. It's one of my first knives, so it's not the best, but it gets the job done. And the steel, if you're wondering, I made this out of a $4 pry bar from Walmart. I do not recommend working with that steel, but if you do want to make a knife and you don't know where to get some steel, go to Walmart and pick up one of these cheap $4 pry bars, the flat bars. And it's in their it's made by their really cheap brand of stuff down there on the bottom. You'll probably be able to find it. It's the same style as the Stanley Wonder Bar, just so you know. The next one is this right here. A small chisel ground utility work knife, single oak scale, and a lanyard hole. You can see the pins there that I peened over. But this is a cool little Wharncliffe leather sheath that I made. And I make all of these sheaths as well. But there's that, and I made this out of the same steel, but I made it with the end of the pry bar, the hooked end. So I took one of these, I cut off the prongs, and then I straightened it out. I forged it flat and straight, and then I forged it out into kind of this shape, and then I ground it to finish. So that was cool. It's one of my first successful forgings. Really cool. And it was made from this, okay? Just scrap steel. But like I said, I do not recommend using that steel. There are imperfections and cracks I've seen in them. It's a pain to heat treat. I don't think it's really that durable of a steel. If you water heat treat it, you run the risk of cracking it, and I've done that on several knives. If you don't do that, you have to do an oil quench, and if you oil quench it, it may not get hard enough. I don't know. It's just kind of horrible. On a similar note, this is another forged knife, also made from the same steel. Like I said, do not recommend this, but for a kind of forward canted Nesmik, the Scandi grind, this is a pretty fun little knife. I like it, and you see the forge finish with all of the imperfections and hammer marks and everything. This is the kind of stuff I like doing, and I like being able to produce a knife that I'm proud of, that I like to show the forged, hammered finish on it. And I don't have many knives that I've done that with. So this is one that I'm kind of proud of, even though the shape and design is kind of wacky and I don't have a sheath for it. So it just kind of sits out. In the beginning, I started making knives by making training knives. So here we've got a couple training knives. This one has a longer blade. Micarta scales, paper micarta. It was the first time I worked with the material, and I didn't really know what I was doing. Made a stupid little sheath for it. This one's all aluminum with brass pins. Nice little butter knife. Okay. This is a pretty thin knife. Like I said, all aluminum. And then I got a little sheath for it that's actually naturally molded to the knife itself, so that's cool. But yeah, these are some of the first knives I made. Back under here, I'm gonna pull out a folding knife again, even though we're in the fixed blade category, because this knife right here, a friend of mine working at Amarillo College, he wanted me to make him a knife, a trainer knife, based on the Voyager. Well, in the end, after I got it finished and I talked to him, he said he would come by and where I was working and pay me, pick it up, whatever. He never did, and so I've got this, which, as you can see, is the same thing. I even did the cutout for the lock bar on it. Acid etched blade with a blunt tip, blunt sides, and if I do say so myself, this is a pretty accurate reproduction. I mean, the handles are the same length, they're the same dimensions. I worked with this thing for quite a while to get it right, and I think I did. So this is kind of a keepsake to me now. It's cool. It's a training knife, and it's just got something about it that I don't really want to get rid of it now. I mean, even though I would love to get it to that guy to sell it to him and, you know, produce a happy customer, it's still, he didn't come back to me for it. And kind of in the knife world, when you're making something and somebody doesn't come to pick it up, what do you do with it? Well, you sell it to somebody else, or you keep it for yourself. At least that's what I've kind of gathered from it, because you have to keep business going, and you can't just wait around for everybody to come back and pick up their knife. At some point you got to sell it, and if they never paid you for it, it's not technically theirs until they pay you for it. So next we'll go ahead and jump into my Bushcraft knives that I've made. Now, this one is not sharp, but it is heat treated. This was Owen tool steel, full flat ground with an oil quench finish on the blade. Paper micarta handles, no finger guard or anything. And one of my first attempts at a contoured handle, so it's not the best. You can see a little dip in there, but it's a pretty comfortable handle and it's pretty cool. Kydex sheath for it's pretty loose. Not the best fit, but it was one of my first attempts at Kydex. Other knife. Same style, but with the saber grind. This one is almost sharp. Never finished the sharpening on it, but it's almost sharp. Saber ground, oil finish, oil quench finish. Same handle, but this was the second one I did, so it's a little better. And it needs a sheath. But I really like. Oh, it's also got the radiusing on the handle there, a little chamfer, or whatever it's called. I don't know. I'm not quite there with terminology yet, but I think it's cool. So there's that one. Got a big knife here. Let's go with this one. This is one of my most complete knives so far, other than this one, and this one's one of my favorites. I actually carry this one and use it, and I love it. This one is based on the same design as this, but with a finger guard. Okay, and it's scanty ground, satin finish, no heat treat finish on it. And it's got a Kydex sheath that fits. Got a thumb ramp on it, blade tech attachment options, drain hole, paper micarta handles, radius around, pretty good, sharp spine. Like I said, scanty ground, pretty sharp, and as I said, one of my most complete knives, and I'm pretty proud of it. Of the achievement I've made of making a real high quality knife. Gonna keep that one for a while. This one, like I said, one of my favorites. Kind of a funky handle shape, as you can see. This was a scrap, a little section that I didn't really know what to do with, so I just drew a design on the steel and then cut it out and made a knife out of it. But this one's polished. There I am. There's the camera. But it's got a nice sweeping belly, continuous belly. So it's a good slicer. It's holding a pretty good edge. Sculpted, or kind of sculpted, machined, whatever. Oak handles, brass pins, treated with linseed oil. I just really like this knife. I know it's kind of weird to, be biased like that, like a knife that you made, but such a funky little design, and I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I really like it. I love it. I carry it in my pocket, just dropped in my pocket. Works pretty well most of the time. I made it originally as a neck knife, but let me zoom out here and show this. Okay, imagine this on your chest. It's a little big. That wasn't really in focus, but whatever. It's way too big to be a neck knife. That's the point. Especially with the sheath and the broadness of the blade. Too big. So, moving on. The biggest knife I've made is this one. This was also before I figured out how I'm actually supposed to make Kydex. So it didn't mold properly. I had to remold it and stuff. But basically it protects the blade right now. This is approximately a 7-inch blade. Paper micarta handles again. 01 tool steel. It's got brass liners on the handle and a hardened pommel that's kind of sharpened to a glass breaker. It's a little broad for it, but it'll work. Handle, just saying, very comfortable. I really like this one. Haven't sharpened it yet. Still got the oil quench finish on the blade. While I was making the sheath, I dropped the knife, hit the concrete, bent the tip and snapped off. I need to reprofile that, so there's some work I need to do on this knife. I need to reprofile the tip without ruining the heat treat. I need to sharpen it. I need to remake a sheath for it. And then this will be a finished knife and quite a nice piece. I'm really liking this one. Next one, I think it's the last one here. I think so. Yeah. Next one is this one. This is one I was making for my granddad. He started it, and this is made out of an old file. And he was working on this with a piece of maple. I think it was maple, and then the file. And he kind of had it in the handle, but he gave me an extra piece of maple, and I started it over from scratch on the handle. Cleaned up the blade. Zoom out. Cleaned up the blade. Left some of the file markings in there so that you can see that it wasn't originally a file. I don't know if you can really... There it is. There it is right there. You can see the reflection. Zoom way in. There. There you go. You can see the marks. I reprofiled the tip. Ow. Reprofiled the tip so it's got a clip point. Complete convex edge. Polished. There I am. And the camera. Made a little brass bolster type thing here with a little copper ring, little copper layer, and rounded out the handle and then made a sheath for it. This is one of my most successful leather sheaths so far, and yeah, fits in nicely and holds it. So that's pretty much my knife collection right now, and this one's going to be going back to my granddad the next time I see him. So there's that, and then I have a number of knives that I'm working on right now that are not finished, but I hope to be finished with sometime very soon. So that's pretty much it. I guess I'll oh wait. One of my very, very, very first knives, which isn't even really a knife, it could only be used as like a kitchen knife, which is basically the intended purpose. I think this was a piece of mild steel that I forged out, the handle and then the blade, and then kind of filed it to an edge. But yeah, this is where I started. This is where I started. This is where I've come. And I've still got a long way to go, but I think I'm on my way. And I'm always improving. So I think that is it. And hope to share more content with you in the future. Maybe an EDC video, my first one. And yeah, I guess I'll talk at you later. See ya.